Experience!
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Week 11 NFL cheat sheet, rankings, bets, props, DFS, and every injury you need. If you want the updated rankings, hit the description. The free link is there on 4for4.com. Take you directly to it. If you want a cheat sheet and summary of this episode, in case you don't want to watch or listen, I would like you to do that, by the way. Even if you're going to bugger off right now, smash a like before you leave. It'd mean a lot to me. Sub to Mayo Media Network as well, but the newsletter will be sent out on Saturday evening to update anything in this show that changes, be it an injury, ownership percentages, some new bet that comes out that's really good in market. Sub to the free Mayo Media newsletter right now, Mayo Media on Substack. You can hit that in the description. Okay, let's get into it. There is one more international series game. It's in Madrid, Washington against Miami. Everyone in Miami who's been regularly going is going in this game. Marcus Mariota playing quarterback for Washington. No Jaden Daniels back as of yet. If they lose this game, probably not going to see him at all. Chris Rodriguez and a shoulder injury are going to play in this game. Terry McLaurin is not. Now, normally Chris Moore was running the vast majority of snaps in Terry McLaurin's place. That did not happen in Week 10 against the Lions. They went with a 4-man rotation. Now, I don't know if that's because Chris Moore stinks and he's just like a cardio king, and they wanted to try someone else that maybe had a connection with Mariota, or that game got so out of hand they were like, let's play these scrubs. Robbie Chosen was actually playing on the outside during the first part of that game, but Moore's snap share went down from around 70% replacing McLaurin down to around 20%. He was actually fourth. Treylon Burks was number one, running the most amount of snaps outside of Debo as a wide receiver too. Then it was Jalen Lane, and then it was Robbie Chosen, then it was Chris Moore. So Burks probably is the better play. Maybe it ends up being Lane because he has that home run potential. They like to get him going deep. He returns punts as well if you're looking for a way to sneak it in. I think there's some value if you can figure out who is going to be the wide receiver too the most of the time. But if that rotation keeps up, you're not going to want any of them. If you're in a desperate situation, I would go with Lane over all else, but hopefully you got better options. But that's what's happening in the Madrid game. Then on to the main slate. Bucky Irving is out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a foot and shoulder injury. He did practice during the week, at least in a limited capacity, so he could be back next week for the Buccaneers. Although I actually think, are the Buccaneers on bye next week? Anyway, he should be good the next time they play a game. Not playing against the Bills this week. Rachaad White has been crappy in terms of efficiency on the ground, but the Bills' run defense sucks. So they might just be pounding Sean Tucker and Rachaad White over and over in a bad weather game in order to keep that game close. So I would play White over Tucker. Not like a must start, but I have him just inside the top 20 at running back this week. Tucker just inside the top 30. Samaje Perine is out for Cincinnati. When we get to the boosted up plays later on for props, I love Chase Brown this week. If you watched the Friday show with John and Tambo, we were building DraftKings lineup. We all really like Chase Brown, and this was the important part, was getting Perine out. Perine was piling up a ton of catches when healthy. Since then, it's Chase Brown playing like 95% of the snaps. He's a top 10, maybe even a top 5 option at running back this week. I take price out of thing. Just overall, he is an amazing play against Pittsburgh this week. Isaiah Pacheco is out for Kansas City, which means we're going to see a whole bunch of Kareem Hunt against the Broncos. Probably not going to look for a ton of efficiency, but if you need a touchdown, it would be Hunt over Smith and Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that backfield. None of them are great starts. Hunt is the best start of the bunch. Justice Hill is out with a toe injury against the Cleveland Browns. For Baltimore, Rashad Bateman is going to be out as well for the Ravens in that game. They are 8.5-point favorites on the road in Cleveland. Cleveland's defense at home this year has been amazing. It has not traveled all that well. Not that you're going to just sit Derrick Henry. You're going to play Derrick Henry. He's not a great start this week. And Lamar has not been running quite as much since he returned from that hamstring injury. Methinks maybe the hamstring not 100%, or he just doesn't want to push it to get injured once again. But you'll probably see a lot of Keaton Mitchell out of the backfield, who might actually be a better... He's not a better running back than Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry's going to pound. You're going to see Keaton Mitchell hit those outsides, and he is fast. He might be able to get the edge on some of these if you're looking for a desperation play. And hopefully, like I'm talking about 14-team, 16-team leagues here, maybe like a first touchdown or longest rush type scenario. It's not going to be that high for Keaton Mitchell if that's the way that you wanted to play it. He's not a start by any means. But if you had to, he is going to see the majority of the backup snaps to Derrick Henry this week. And God forbid they fall behind. They might actually play him a ton and throw to him in the normal Justice Hill spot. Probably not likely with how that spread has played itself out so far. It's more than a touchdown spread. They expect, and I expect the Ravens to be up in that game, mainly because Cleveland can't score. I mean, they might only be up 6-0, but that's probably good enough to beat the Browns at this point. J.K. Dobbins is out with a foot injury for the Denver Broncos. He might go on injured reserve. So what we're going to see is Jaleel McLaughlin is expected to be activated. Bidet is still going to be in the mix somehow. But R.J. Harvey, this could finally be the time for him to get going. It's a difficult matchup, albeit against the Chiefs, but he's been used a ton out of the backfield. One of the most, if not the most efficient pass-catching running back so far in the NFL. He just had so many limited opportunities. If he gets more than 15 touches in this game, I'm going to be kind of stunned, but I would project it between 10 and 15. I have him just on the periphery of top 20 running backs this week. Hopefully I'm wrong because I got R.J. Harvey in a bunch of spots. I could really use him to be good, but I know what Sean Payton gets up to, and he'll just run a 3-man rotation with absolute goobers instead of using the one good running back that you have left active. Hopefully, I'm wrong about that, and RJ Harvey gets a ton. Wouldn't count on it, though. As mentioned, Chris Rodriguez is in for the Commanders. Bam Knight is the only truly questionable one right now in that game that everyone wants to attack because of the cheaper options in the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers game. Most of the Niners are back on the Arizona side of the ball. If we don't get Bam Knight, DeMercado, because Trey Benson's going to be out as well. If there's no Bam Knight, DeMercado becomes like a decent start, like running back 24 for the week, just because it's going to be Michael Carter and him. They're going to give him the ball. If Bam Knight is there, don't play any of them. But Marvin Harrison is out in that receiving core with an emergency appendectomy, so he's gone for this week. Should be back as of next week. But now we're going to see Semi Foco, that guy that used to be on the Chargers, he's going to see some snaps this week. But Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch are going to be the primary receivers. Obviously, Trey McBride is the best tight end on the slate, whether it's season-long fantasy, Eliminator leagues, DFS, doesn't matter. Trey McBride, especially just since taking out Marvin Harrison and inserting Jacoby Brissett just inserting Jacoby Brissett has done wonders for Trey McBride. Now taking out Marvin Harrison, who is right around 10 targets a game, should just filter more towards Trey McBride. So it's a fantastic situation to be in. Michael Wilson over Dortch for me. Both are capable starts. Wide receiver 3 for Michael Wilson, low-end flex play for Dortch. But he does have a ton of speed. Maybe he could break one out, or if the Niners get up in this game, a lot of pass volume coming back. I would think the same way about DeMercado if Bam Knight sits, that he just might pick up a bunch of catches if they do have to play catch-up mode in this game. For the Giants, everything was setting up perfectly. Jackson Dart is out. Russell Wilson is benched. Jameis Winston is starting, which means Darius Slayton was going to light up the world with 80 deep shots in this game from Jameis. But he's not playing, so don't play him. He's out with a hamstring injury. Who's it going to be? They activated Isaiah Hodgins, who was a real hero for any fantasy player 3 years ago when Daniel Jones made that run to the playoffs and they beat the Vikings. Isaiah Hodgins was all over it. Maybe he gets utilization. Maybe it's a little Jordan Humphrey. I don't know. It's going to be Theo Johnson for me, and it's going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. Those are basically the only two Giants that you really want to run out overall this week. You could play Tyrone Tracy. You could play Devin Singletary. Hell, you could play Daniel Bellinger first touchdown. If you're doing that, your team's probably not going to win this week. So Wan'Dale, pretty good. Theo Johnson, a streamer tight end. If that's the way that you're looking, I like both those guys with Jameis because he tends to favor his tight ends, and Wan'Dale's the only good receiver left on this team. But Packers defense, that's going to be a good play here. Chris Godwin is out with his fibula injury once again. Obviously, Mike Evans not coming back for Tampa Bay, at least in the short term, which means we're going to get more Tez Johnson in this game to complement Egbuka, 5.5-point road dogs in Buffalo. But again, bad weather in that game. I like Tez enough. Tez is in that Wan'Dale Robinson wide receiver 30-ish range. You can hit the description and get the rankings over at 4for4.com right away to see where everyone absolutely finally ranks when I update them again on Sunday morning. Torrey Horton is out for the Seahawks. Expect more Shaheed, although Cooper Kupp has been taken off the injury report, but we didn't really get a chance to understand how any of this is going to work for the Seahawks. As Torrey Horton was out last week, Shaheed played a bunch, so did Cooper Kupp. Then they got up 28-0. It was all right, let's not really do much the rest of this game. So I think that this week against the Rams will be a bit more telling. They do tend to play a lot of two tight end sets with Barner and Arroyo. JSN is always on the field. Then they rotate that other guy through. Will they start playing more 3 wide receiver sets once Horton comes back to utilize Shaheed a little bit more and get Kupp into the slot? Maybe, but I have no idea what the game plan is going to look like, especially against the Rams. It would be Shaheed. I mean, obviously JSN is like the best start of the week. But then you go into Shaheed. That's probably it for me for the Seahawks. Like if you had to play a Barner or Arroyo, I'd rather a Theo Johnson, for example, in that situation. And even with the running backs, like they don't do anything. Even when they score a touchdown, they rarely score fantasy points. And they just gave it to some other goober last week, and he ended up scoring a touchdown. So that was no good. That Kenneth Walker over Charbonnet, but it's a very good run defense for the Rams, and I wouldn't expect much. You just always, to me, between the two, although Charbonnet is usually the one who will end up getting the goal line touches that we've seen, they're not very valuable. Unless he scores 2 touchdowns, he ends up with like 16 fantasy points. That would be like somewhat acceptable. At least with Walker, we know the long play is in there, that if he does score a touchdown, it's probably going to be a 40-yard touchdown, and then all of a sudden he's very useful for the week. So keep that in mind. Rashad Bateman, as mentioned, out for the Ravens. I bet Wallace first touchdown in that game because they just like taking random deep shots with him whenever Bateman is out. Not a fantasy start. Zay Flowers only, and maybe Mark Andrews as well for the receiving game of the Ravens. Devontae Adams is expected to play for the Rams. Had a back/oblique injury last week. He might be somewhat limited, but if he's playing, you're playing him even in a bad matchup. Ricky Pearsall, and his knee injury is coming back for the 49ers. Wouldn't play him this week, more of a test situation to see how things are going, but I would play Juwan Jennings. I would play George Kittle, and obviously Christian McCaffrey. Brock Purdy back for the 49ers as well, so that offense, once they get a few more offensive linemen back, is going to be at absolute full speed, which they really need at this point in time because the defense just keeps losing guy. The offense lost a guy per week every week for the first 5 weeks. Now they're getting healthy. Now the defense is losing a guy per week for the last 5 weeks, and those guys probably aren't coming back because they're done for the season. They can find a way to patchwork together that defense. The offense should be humming at this point. Matthew Golden and his shoulder is leaning in for the Packers against the Giants, but no official word on him yet. Romeo Doubs will play for the Packers in that game along with Christian Watson. It's too difficult to figure out who they're throwing to at this point. Like Love, good play. Jacobs, good play. Everyone else, maybe Musgrave is decent. Brian Thomas could be back with his high ankle sprain for the Jags against the Chargers. They know they need this game. Weirdly enough, when you take a look at playoff percentages, this is the most important game of the season by far. Everyone's putting all the hype because the game is awesome for Seahawks and Rams. But no matter who wins or loses that game, both those teams are like 90% to make the playoffs. If the Jags lose this game, they're basically like done from the playoffs. Their playoff probability drops to around 19%, or if the Chargers win this game, because of tiebreakers in the AFC, that the Chargers become like a 91% favorite to make the playoffs should they win this game in Jacksonville. So it could be all hands on deck, and they rush back a Brian Thomas Jr. If he plays, really wouldn't want to play him, and I'd bet his under on the props. Parker Washington, his hamstring injury, missed Wednesday's practice. He is going to be in. So you'll have Parker Washington. You're going to have Jacoby Myers and Diami Brown with maybe Brian Thomas and, well, I was going to say Brenton Strange, but he's not playing. Brenton Strange is out, and Hunter Long is out at the tight end position. So we're getting Johnny Munt at tight end this week for the Chargers and for the Jags. And on the other side of the ball, like Ladd McConkey's playing, Aronde Gadsden is playing, Quentin Johnson's playing. They're playing all of their guys. Their offensive line reeks, but all of their weapons are going to be available for them in this game. So it's Parker Washington or bust, honestly, at Jags receiver. For me, he's the one that I would want to play over everyone else. Kayshon Boutte, the Boutte man, missed Thursday Night Football with his hamstring injury. Maybe he should be able to return next week. Zay Jones out for the season with an Achilles injury on Arizona. So Zay Jones and Marvin Harrison both not playing this week in that glorious matchup against the 49ers. When we talked on the DraftKings show, we spoke so much about Wilson and we spoke a ton about Greg Dortch. Obviously, because of their price point, they make a lot of things work. If you were looking for a pivot off those guys this week, I do like Luther Burden inside against the Vikings. His snap share has been ticking up. Zacchaeus has been trending down, and Zacchaeus dropped like every ball ever thrown to him last week. Tight ends, there's a lot of important injuries here. As mentioned, Brenton Strange did return to practice. He was not activated from injured reserve. He is out this week for the Jags, as is Hunter Long. Johnny Munt playing. Josh Oliver questionable as the backup tight end to TJ Hawkinson for the Minnesota Vikings against said Chicago Bears. Not really too concerned about that, but there are two very big ones. Dalton Kincaid is out for the Buffalo Bills. That means Dawson Knox is going to get up there, and the Haas, the Laugh Factory, might see a few more. If you want to bet Haas's first touchdown, don't hate that. It's something that I'm going to be doing this week. Backup tight ends who love catching touchdowns. And additionally, late on Friday, Sam Laporta is out for the Detroit Lions, which means you get the Brock says. Right? Wrong? Maybe? But you probably don't want to stream Brock right in this matchup against the Eagles. But just remember, Laporta is out. Get him out of your lineups. If you want the full updated rankings, once again, down in the description, smash the like while you're here. Jackson Dart is out, as mentioned before, for the Giants. Jameis Winston is starting. CJ Stroud is out for the Houston Texans in a pretty soft matchup against the Tennessee Titans. Davis Mills will start again. Brock Purdy is back from his toe injury, taken off of the injury report. Joe Burrow is targeting a Week 13 return for the Cincinnati Bengals. They probably have to win one of their next 2 games to stay alive with Joe Flacco, so we'll see how that goes. And Jaden Daniels remains out indefinitely with his dislocated elbow. There's a chance he could come back this year. I don't think that we see him again. Like, if Washington loses to Miami on Sunday morning, we're not seeing Daniels again. They're not going to bring back Jaden Daniels with a dislocated elbow with a 3-7 team. By the time he gets back, they'll be 3-9. What would be the point of that? I just don't see that happening. Now, if they fight their way back into it, they win 2 games in a row and have an outside chance at an NFC wildcard, which even at 5-7, like, wouldn't be very good and still not very highly probable that they would end up making the playoffs. Maybe you see him try to come back, but if they're out of playoff contention, they're better off just keeping him on ice and like losing as many games as possible. And that's much easier to do when Marcus Mariota is your quarterback than having Jaden Daniels out there. Coming up after the break, we got DraftKings picks, Underdog, prop plays, PME boosts, and everything more in between. Please stay tuned. Somewhat surprisingly, I actually take tailgating very seriously. Grill fired up, cooler packed, and yeah, I'm the guy everyone counts on for the food. Whether that's my home barbecues, birthdays, tailgating, doesn't matter what it is, Pat Mayo is always relied upon for bringing the food. That's why I go with Omaha Steaks, the official sponsor of tailgating. They've been America's original butcher for over a century, and everything they send is top-notch, perfectly aged steaks, juicy burgers, those thick, deli-style franks, all delivered directly to your door. I tossed the ribeyes on the grill last weekend. Crazy tender, amazing flavor, and you can taste the quality. There's no off-season for flavor here. Make your next game day delicious with Omaha Steaks. Just head to omahasteaks.com and use promo code MAYO at checkout for $35 off your order. That's omahasteaks.com. Promo code MAYO. Terms apply. See site for details. Whether you like golf, whether you like fantasy, or you just enjoy lots of money, starting the second week of January, the race for the Mayo Cup is on. Join thousands of fantasy players at fantasygolfchampionships.com for your shot at over $1 million in prizes, including the $110,000 first place prize. And this isn't like those giant contests where it goes from $110 to $20. No, everyone who finishes inside the top 250 this year wins at least 4 figures. Everyone inside the top 20 gets 5 figures. And it's simple. Takes 10 seconds a week. You pick one player per week. You can use that guy once all season long. Even if you know nothing about golf, you can still play in this and try to win the grand prize. Sign up now at fantasygolfchampionships.com or hit the description and just use the link. The race for the Mayo Cup is on. Let's talk some props for the week. Obviously, we'll dig into Underdog and the Sharp Stack tool, but we're going to start at coolbet.com if you're in Canada. Outside of Ontario, you can utilize old coolbet.com, fastest payouts in the biz, plus exclusive PME weekly boost down here on the left-hand side. I got a Grey Cup one. Shout out to my friend Ben Kramer for helping me out with this one because I don't know anything about the CFL, but the Grey Cup is this weekend, and you can play this 4-1 3-prop player parlay. Same game parlay for the Grey Cup. Woulette over 12 yards, Schaefer Baker, 45 yards or more, and T. Theus, under 17.5 receiving yards. In this game, pays 4-1. I think 50 is like the max you can get down on that, but I don't really know what I'm doing. But I trust Ben from Unabated. He has been one of the best CFL cappers. If you want like unique share, he's also great at curling betting. Sometimes these fringe sports are exactly where you need to be. So you can play that up at coolbet.com right now as well. They're also, if you follow Coolbet on Twitter, they're doing a giveaway for first touchdown in that game. I think it's like a money back type play. And we have the weekly boost for the NFL. I really wanted to get Pat Bryant longest reception onto this, but there's just no markets available for Pat Bryant longest reception. That is a play that I do like. So this one pays 0.15 to 1, plus 615. Chase Brown, 4 or more receptions. Dylan Gabriel, under 181.5 passing yards against the Ravens. And then Tony Pollard against the Texans, under 41.5 rushing yards. The logic for the first two makes absolute sense. Like I already talked about Pirine not playing. There are dogs in that game. Flacco loves checking down. Boom. I think Brown had 14 targets 2 weeks ago. So hopefully he can get to 4 or more catches in that game if it's somewhat competitive and back and forth, or they just fall behind. With Gabriel, he just stinks, and it's terrible weather in Cleveland, and Baltimore's defense is good. So just under 181.5. You pray that someone doesn't take a screen pass 90 yards. That's what happened to me last week. There was a Breece Hall check down that ended up just absolutely destroying me. It was the touchdown last week against Cleveland. It was like a 41-yard pass. I was like, oh, great. That's how Justin Fields is going to manage to get more than 50 yards passing in this game. With Tony Pollard, it's easy. Pollard hasn't been good all year long. They're 7-point dogs to a backup quarterback going against one of the 3 best run defenses in the league. As long as Houston can jump out to an early lead in this game, I feel good that simply Pollard's not going to have the volume to get to the 41 yards. If he breaks a big one, well, you're screwed. What's going to happen? But under 41.5 seems like a very good number to me. Coolbet.com, under the PME weekly boost, you can find 2 of them up there right now. Let's move over to Underdog. A lot of profit boosts in the lobby right now. I've actually played a few so far, but I did want to play one extra one for the game on Sunday morning in Madrid, if we can get into that. Actually, I can just show you what I've played so far. I might include that in the newsletter as we go through. Oh, here we are. Devin Achane, touchdown. Now we're into something else here. Let's go back to Pick'em on old Underdog and figure out what we're doing here. All right, Achane touchdown is, 0.78. Don't love that. Yeah, let's do it anyway. I think he's going to score a touchdown. Sometimes you just got to eat a little bit of juice. It's okay if that ends up being the play. Jalen Lane, longest reception, 13.5 or more. Let's go with that. And we're going to throw in Jalen Waddle. Where is his longest reception? What is it, 26.5? Don't love that. So let's go with, he's going to have a ton of, let's go with first quarter receptions. This screwed us last week when we played this. I had Kyle Pitts' first drive reception, which he had wide open, punted it, just dropped it on the ground with lobster hands, and it screwed up the entire play. That's okay, though. So we got 5.35 to 1 on this, and we can boost that up if we want to. Let's go with for this one, I'm going to do a larger one for the 50% boost and the $50 max. We'll do this 40% boost and get that up to, 7 to 1 on a max $50 entry. Let's do that. $50 pays 351. So Waddle, over 1.5 receptions in the first quarter. Jalen Lane, longest reception, over 13.5. Oh, then great, my location's not turned on. That's what I get for using an alternate computer. And then Achane, anytime touchdown is what I'm going to play for this game if you want to go through that with me. That's what I'm playing for the Madrid game. If you want to have a sweat, I'll tweet that one out a little bit later on Saturday at the PME. If you're looking for it, we'll go to live. See what we got cooking here. Got some basketball on the go. I got some college football on the go. All thanks to SharpStack. I'm just using SharpStack for a lot of that stuff. Let's see. This was the main one that I played. Very similar to the one that you saw earlier when I did the cool bet boost. Chase Brown higher. I did alt that up to 4.5 receptions. Dylan Gabriel lower than 176.5 passing yards. And Lamar Jackson lower than 35.5 rushing yards. I mentioned these 3 things on the show already. Let's see, that pays 33, pays 255, so the multiplier is 7.75 to 1. It's one of the ones that I really like this week. I'm going to be making more as we go through. You can see I already played another 5-banger. James Cook higher than 12.5 receiving yards in that bad weather game. You have to remember that Tampa Bay is a pass running back funnel type of team. That could just take 1 for James Cook in the ideal situation. Hopefully he gets there. Chase Brown higher than 3.5 receptions. That's a non-alted line for him. Jordan Addison against the Bears higher than 3.5 receptions. Theo Johnson, mentioned him earlier. I like Theo Johnson and Wandale, 43.5 receiving yards. Higher for him from Jameis. And then Tony Pollard lower than 39.5. I believe that is a 20 to 1 payout on the money. That's without it being boosted up. If you use one of those boosts, you get that up to 25, 26 to 1. This one will be available in the newsletter to tag along with if that's the route that you wanted to take. I like all 5 of those. You can play them smaller. You can add extra guys to them or just completely fade me. Do whatever you want with the entire thing. Let's jump over to SharpStack to see what it is saying in the NFL category. Sam Darnold rushing yards under 5.5 is the play of the week as of right now. You can get that at BetMGM, 4for4.com/Mayo if you want to get in on the Sharp Stack tool. If you use code Mayo50 at sign up, you get a free week. And then you have the decision of whether or not that you want to, look at that in real time. Geno Smith passing yards under 244.5 pops up on the screen. Just a lot is being loaded in from a lot of different books. You can always click this plus sign to see what the numbers are at other places as well. So 244.5 at BetMGM is that best number right now. Like Caesars has it at 11 yards lower. Would not bet it there for 3 cents cheaper. I'd rather take the extra 11 yards on that. But you can see 234.5 as well. Sam Darnold goes back up to that 5.5. The other numbers, 5.5. It's 3.5 at DraftKings, 3.5 at Caesars. You can almost play the middle on that if you wanted. I mean, it's a very thin way to play the middle, and you probably can't get that many down. But these are just some of the ones that you can look at. Always take a look. You can go to the odds screen. You can click on all the projections as well. I mean, this is NBA, but you can go over to college football projections if you want to shop lines anywhere. NFL projections per player that are up there. You can always download them as well if you want to run your own system on them. That's all available within the Sharp Stack tool. We can find some ARBs on the screen. What's the best ARB of the day? It is a college football play with Haynes King. It's only a $4 one, and if you bet $100, you're guaranteed to lock yourself in. $4 a profit because at BetMGM, over 1.5 receptions is plus 120. Under 1.5 receptions at Hard Rock is even money. So lock yourself in. This is what you'd have to bet on each side. Are there good middles here? Chris Rodriguez rushing yards. Okay. You would need to have Hard Rock and Novig, or Hard Rock and ESPN bet right now. You could go over 32.5 rushing yards for Chris Rodriguez at minus 120. You could also go under 41.5 rushing yards for Chris Rodriguez at Hard Rock. You do need all the books to do this, but play yourself a middle and potentially win on both. You're guaranteed to win one side of it, and you might lose a little bit of vig on it because the way that everything is juiced up. However, you can find yourself in a spot where he finishes with 35 rushing yards and you win both sides of the bet. I know a lot of people like to play things this way. It's just the way that you can go through it if you really want to. So 4for4.com/Mayo will get you over to the page. Use code Mayo50 to sign up. You get a free week test trial, 7 days, and then it's 50% off the monthly plan after that if you decide to go through with it. DFS, DraftKings-wise, this week, we'll take a look at some of the best values per position. The biggest one is going to be, honestly, this DeMercado situation, which we might not know, so maybe a good late swap if Bam Knight ends up being out. But we take a look at the projected ownership this week. It's not just me who likes Chase Brown, it's the world. And in the same game, Jaylen Warren. It's an easy week to jam in some expensive running backs if you wanted to, because you can see Chase Brown and Jaylen Warren are both really good prices. 27% owned expected right now. I'll have the updated ownership projections later on Saturday evening, but that's a pretty good value right there. And then you can run one of McCaffrey, Jacobs, or Robinson through your lineup as well. We did find ways, because this is all because of the Michael Wilson situation, the Greg Dortch situation, that you can play those guys for so little, you can pay yourself up. McCaffrey, 25%, Jacobs, 22%, Robinson, 17%. We were able to make lineups with Jacobs and McCaffrey, Jacobs and Bijan, Jacobs and McCaffrey. We were able to manipulate it that way, and I don't think very many people are going to do that. Outside of it, Rico Dowdle, Aaron Jones, Travis Etienne, and then you have RJ Harvey. There is this collection of running backs in the mid $5,000 area that are all pretty good, honestly. So you have Chase Brown, who's the best of the bunch. DeAndre Swift is right there as well, who I think is a pretty good value against a weak-ish run defense of the Minnesota Vikings. It's a good defense overall. They're completely healthy, but the way to attack them is on the ground, not through the air, as long as you don't fall behind. So they could utilize DeAndre Swift that way. He was back to playing more snaps than Monangai. It was actually the biggest split of them since like week 3 last week, with Swift returning from his injury after Monangai came off the giant game. So that might flip back, but with J.K. Dobbins being out, you have R.J. Harvey down at $5,400, a great value. Woody Marks at $5,400, a great value against Tennessee. Aaron Jones, pretty good value on the other side of the ball from DeAndre Swift. Since he's returned from his injury, he's playing way more than Jordan Mason. Etienne's a very nice value at $5,600. So you can manage to put it all together in this spot. Isaiah Pacheco is out, so Kareem Hunt is at $5,200. He's not a great value. It's just a bad matchup for him. And then you get down to DeMercado at $4,500. Presuming that Bam Knight is out, he is a pretty good play if you needed to save money, knowing, the opportunity cost of using DeMercado as your running back versus a Michael Wilson or Greg Dortch is like a pivot kind of sucks because there's so many good running back options that now you're utilizing one of those spots and you can't have three of the really good guys this week. But it could be an interesting pivot. Either way, if that's the way you wanted to look at it. The best values on the board, McCaffrey, Bijan, Warren, Dowdle, and Jacobs are the top 5 points per dollar plays in GPPs. Then it's Brown, Marks, Harvey, Jones, and ETN. If you get the Sharp Stack tool at 4for4.com/Mayo, code Mayo50, you get access to all of these tools as well and all the projections, ownership for DFS purposes. It's all encompassing when you get the Sharp Stack level. Everything on the site is available to you. Jamar Chase is being projected as the highest owned wide receiver this week. Jackson Smith and Jigba number 2. Then Michael Wilson at 21% at $3,800 on DraftKings. Wandale after that at 55, especially with the news that Darius Slayton is going to be out. Jefferson, Rice, Puka, DK Metcalf, Nico Collins, Romeo Doubs. Drake London honestly is being underowned. $5,400. Yeah, he's presumably going to get JC Horn on him, but it didn't matter when he had Sauce Gardner on him last week. This is the only guy in the Falcons offense who Michael Penix feels comfortable throwing to, outside of Bijan, I suppose. Maybe Bijan over receptions is another really good look as well. But Drake London is honestly closer to this top, and this was a discussion that John Tambo and I had because we did work in a JSN Puka lineup with Matt Stafford because those are the pieces of that game that you want, and it leaves it pretty flimsy. But of all these guys, like Adams is banged up. Rice, who knows, bad matchup. Surtain is out on the Broncos defense, and he's had high utilization, but now Rashee Rice is $7,900. But when we start looking down, like London right now is closer to the Jamar Chase, Rashee Rice level, and he's $500 cheaper, and no one's really using him versus these other guys. No one is using Devontae Adams because he comes in with an injury tag this week, so we don't know exactly what his snap share is going to be. Is he going to get re-injured? Is he at full health? It could be a nice spot to take a punt on him, but you're just paying so much money at $7,700 that for me, it would be Drake London down here, and the GPP value would bear that out right now as he's the second best on the board behind Jamar Chase, JSN, Michael Wilson, Puka. Those are your top 5. Then it's Rashee Rice, McConkey, Juwan Jennings, Nico Collins, and then Jacoby Myers. But if Brian Thomas plays, obviously Jacoby Myers at $4,600 ends up taking a punt down the board as well. Projected value this week, let's try to find some cheap guys. It's Michael Wilson. Greg Dortch is going to be another one that you can go to at $4,400. Christian Watson. However, if everyone ends up playing, maybe he's not the best move, although the longest reception for Christian Watson, always a look every single week that you're going through. Juwan Jennings, even with Ricky Bullets coming back, a very good value. Cooper Kupp is down there. I don't personally believe that. I would much rather find the money for Tez Johnson at $4,700. I'm actually surprised that the optimizer doesn't like Greg Dortch all that much. Let's look up Greg Dortch to see what he's up to. I mentioned Luther Burden earlier as well. I like him. So he's at 1.9. His GPP value is a little bit lower, only coming at 5% owned. I don't hate Greg Dortch this week, mainly because he is a speedster. Luther Burden has a bad GPP value as well, projected ownership 0, but I just think he's going to start playing more. And if they are behind in this game, he is the deep threat that you would want outside of a Dunze, obviously, on the Bears. The other one would be play Davis Mills and Nico Collins together in the buy low receiver projection model at 4for4 right now. If we just kind of pop over there, we'll open that up, you can see, and this is behind the DFS wall, but I'll give you some insight. The breakout receiver model, Nico Collins is the man on that. Let's look. Pat Mayo's updated 2025 Week 11 Fantasy Football Rankings. That's the link. That's available down in the description right now if you're looking at it. The breakout model sees Nico Collins. Alec Pierce is still projected to have more points. So if you want to play the breakout guys this week, honestly, the J.J. McCarthy, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison stack. Jefferson's 3rd and Addison is 5th in the buy low model, with Nico Collins clearly being the number 1. And we know that Alec Pierce is not on the slate. Christian Watson would be another one in the meantime. Ao Minor is down there. I forgot to mention Calvin Ridley. He might play this week. Not that anyone cares, but just you don't want Tennessee receivers at all because Van Jefferson is at that point as well. Cortland Sutton should break out at some point. Same with Xavier Worthy, but that's just what we're looking at right now for the underperforming players. That triple stack with Minnesota might be the way that you want to go because at tight end, it's going to be McBride and no one else. People are finding any way possible to get McBride in, and the stack usually is Brissett, McBride, Michael Wilson with McCaffrey coming back. I think that's going to be the most popular game stack of the week. If it's not Jefferson, Addison, J.J. McCarthy, and a bear coming back the other side. Those are two great spots. There's weather problems all over the country that those games are indoors. You can kind of count on those bad defenses playing in that game as well of the side that you're attacking. But McBride, 23% at tight end. Kittle, Gadsden, Theo Johnson, Kyle Pitts, the only other ones projected between 7 and 10%. But that's it. They're less than half of what McBride is going to be. And you know what? McBride might not be owned enough on this slate. Just look at his value relative to anyone else. Like the gap between him at 6.63 and then George Kittle is second along with Kyle Pitts at 2.6. It's 3 times as much value on McBride, even being the highest owned of the tight ends. Kelsey rates out pretty highly in terms of value-ish. There's just not that many positive tight ends that you can look at. But if you're going to play 2 this week, maybe the value is on McBride and then pair him up with another tight end. Maybe just go Kittle McBride in that game. And then you can kind of get away from the cheaper values. But then you don't have as much opportunity at the top of the pricing in order to get in some of those studs that you would want in your lineups. J.J. McCarthy projecting out to be the highest owned, but his projection is down from what we saw on Friday. I think it's going to trend that same way. McCarthy, Brissett, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, and Joe Flacco. If you're looking at the best values, it's going to be J.J. McCarthy, but then it's Brissett, Herbert, who's not getting a ton of ownership, then Mahomes against Denver. Don't love Mahomes in the spot. Brock Purdy, I don't think a lot of people are going to that. If you do go to the optimizer version in the time codes of the show I did on Friday, you can see Tambo, John, and I walk through how to do a Brissett lineup and how to pivot that into a lineup for Brock Purdy instead, with him coming back just to try to get a little bit more different in that game. That's going to do it on the weekend update. That was the cheat sheet. Use our friends over at coolbet.com. Use our friends over at underdog.com. Code Mayo at Underdog, by the way, not only gets you access to a free pick, you have a $5 pick'em play. You automatically get $100 of bonus credits in the fantasy game as well, win or lose. So you can just play one of the ones that I put out today, add a free pick to it, do a $5 entry, you get $100 anyway along with your deposit bonus. Hey, maybe it wins. Wouldn't that be nice? Smash a like and subscribe to the newsletter while you're here, because I will be sending out the cheat sheet version of this show, both in point form and in a bit of analysis form on the players that I touched on the show as well. It'll all be up there completely free as always. All right. Thank you all for watching. I'm Pat Mayo. Good luck in week 11. See you on Sunday.